guys. So today I am uploading the last video of the weekend. So before I start, I just want to thank everyone who has came to my Discord or commented some really nice things about kind of like how I could improve or just like basic feedback. I do appreciate it. So with that being said, I do want to kind of reward with a great video on how to hit leaderboard. Even if you might be new early to the game or you've never actually tried a leaderboard run before. So for this video, me and my buddies set out a challenge on kind of dumbing down our units. So obviously with us currently at number 1, 2, 3, and 4 at the top of the leaderboard, I set out to maybe find a team with not just uniques and divines, and maybe more just common legendaries and very common mythicals that everyone has. So we made it really easy to kind of understand how to do a leaderboard, and we use units like Dio, Jotaro, Rukia, basically units that I feel like most people would normally overshadow or would, you know, pick mythicals over. We instead picked legendaries to make sure that people that aren't the top of the best or the best of the best or whatever it is can actually do this without trying too hard, and maybe just spending a little more time strategizing than opposed to, you know, spending hours grinding for traits that you may or may not get. So before I start this video, I do want to remind you guys to please like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. It really does mean a lot. I also want to take a second before the video starts to kind of shout out my Discord. It is discord.gg/Sintra. If you haven't joined yet, it's a really great spot for anyone that's looking for leaderboard runs or just help in general. We help out new players, old players, top players, maybe people that just came back to the game. So it's a really great place to start. If you haven't joined it, make sure to join. And then on top of it, I am live on Twitch almost every other day. If you are interested in seeing maybe my live runs or maybe like the carries that I can do on stream, feel free to swing by. I'm live almost every other day. It is twitch.tv/Sintra. Before I start kind of showing you guys what we did, I want to explain what units we actually ended up using. So for a lot of these units, what we ended up picking was just basic legendaries, and for the reason that I know a lot of people maybe can't pull mythicals or get extremely rare traits on the units that they have. So what we kind of did was we grabbed the highest amount of people that have a certain unit, and we based off, okay, so let's say this many people have this many of this unit. We picked the highest pick rate and the most maybe kind of sleeper units / pick units. And yeah, so one of the first things that I'm going to show off the rip is Gone. So for example, Gone is probably the easiest character to evo. All you really need is 10 Gones to begin with, and you are left with a Gone adult. After that, you can evo Gone adult. He is kind of pricey on Starfruits, but for the average player, that shouldn't be too much of a problem, considering that Starfruits is obtainable both by infinite and by doing the challenges. From there, I kind of want to showcase some other units that we ended up using. So stuff like Rukia. You don't need a mythical trait on Rukia. This is just kind of a shiny that I have. Stuff like Yusuka. So we use Yusuka to slow down. People say that Mochi is better. In my opinion, I kind of do agree. But most people don't have Mochi, can't get Mochi, and even when they do get Mochi, Mochi is too expensive compared to Hisoka. So we use kind of like the dumbed down version. Dio. So a lot of people require, you know, freezes and stuns. Dio has a natural passive stun that kind of operates on its own. So Dio is a good replacement if you don't have stuff like Shanks. Same thing with Jotaro. Jotaro, I would recommend getting a range trait on Jotaro. He's a great single like AoE stun, and I think people really do sleep on Jotaro when he is probably one of the S tier stunners in the game. Blackbeard is pretty required. I mean, some people only have him at level 1. Blackbeard is pretty easy to obtain, and on top of it, he is really useful. He gives a 15% debuff to everything that it hits, meaning that if you hit it once with the curse status effect, anything that hits it right after that will give an increased 15% damage, which it is pretty useful, especially when comboed with someone like Sakura. Sakura, for example, is a great like buffing unit. I would always recommend getting a ranged trait so you fit the maximum amount of units that can get buffed in the AoE. And then Irwin obviously can never go wrong. Irwin will be your buff as long as you have someone that's consistently buffing your Irwin. Okay, so for our run, we also did end up having a Kisuke Bunkai. For a lot of people, Kisuke is unobtainable now, and a lot of people don't have her. But for a majority, most people actually do have Kisuke. If you don't have Kisuke, chances are people that you've LFG with or that you know that you're going to do the run with are going to have Kisuke. For our run, we use 2. But for your run, you could probably only squeeze 1 if you really tried. So Kisuke, I'd always recommend, you can get him. So if not, this is where like mythicals start coming in. So Urza, for a lot of people are gonna see this and be like, well, I can't get Urza. Is there a replacement for her? Yeah. So under the impression that you can at least have one mythic that isn't just Gon, Urza is a great kind of like do all, see all, and hit all. You don't necessarily need lightning. I picked the lightning that I had because I didn't want to pick this unique one. But it kind of doesn't matter as long as you pick an Urza. It doesn't matter what form you actually get. They're all pretty good in their respective ways, and I think the only reason why we picked Urza is because Urza is literally the easiest character to Evo. There's no reason why you shouldn't have at least one. Urza is really easy to Evo. All you have to do is get her from the banner, and then from there you just do dungeon 1 or 2, 3 times, and you should be like halfway done with most of the stuff that you need to get. If you are having trouble getting the magical artifacts, all you have to do is hit wave 10 on infinite. You don't even have to kill the boss, and you'll get at least 2 to 6. So it is really simple to do. I would always recommend it for someone that maybe is struggling getting Urza. Urza is literally the easiest character, so getting all 3 forms shouldn't be too hard as long as you can get some decent gems by just going for her. You have a week 2, so you shouldn't sweat it. And yeah, so other than using Gon, obviously we did end up using Gon. Gon is an important part of the DPS and kind of how like the AoE function works. I would say most people have Gon. He's really easy to obtain, so that's why we kind of went with Gon, and instead of going with other DPS units like Crush or something really high end. So yeah, instead of picking units like Mochi, Shanks, like Whitebeard or All Might, units that normally I feel like you would kind of use to like overdo a job, we didn't pick them and instead used units like Pain for knockback, and we used stuff like Juvie, I think we even used. So yeah, okay. So just to kind of show that it is possible, these are the runs that we've done just this like past week or 2. We haven't tried too hard on a lot of these runs. Like I haven't done AOT or I haven't done Marineford. And then if you were there for my stream, you would know that my Snowy Town lagged out really early. This is the team that I ran with. I ran with these top 3 people, and Meaty, which for some reason Meaty doesn't show up. I'm not sure if that's like an internal bug or maybe actually I don't know. But yeah, just imagine Meaty here. 280 is what we hit. 261 was the round that was the time, or the round to beat, but we still managed to hit it. So like I said, even with these guys probably using way better units than we were still able to just completely overwipe and do way more than what they were able to do, just by using stuff like legendaries. I know a lot of people think it's kind of impossible, but here's the video explaining that it is possible and it's not as hard as you would think. Once you get past 280, I feel like you'll start experiencing maybe like some faulty server issue, or some lag at some point. It gets a little too laggy for comfort. That's totally normal. As long as you're able to stay and not get AFK kicked, you should be fine. Yeah, I'm gonna hop into an infinite right now and kind of explain versus show the video of what we actually did to get to it. If you are still left with questions, like I said, feel free to join my Discord. We help out a lot, or just comment down below and I'll be looking at most of these replies. Thank you once again. When you're looking at the map for this infinite, it's actually really simple to understand. All you have to realistically do is separate your stuns, so then everything kind of gets looped stunned as long as everything's passively going through. Realistically, your unit shouldn't be going through until about wave maybe like 200. That's when your unit should be breaking around this area. It kind of depends if you're using better units than what we did, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be explaining slow stuns and abilities versus kind of what you can upgrade to in future. So the next unit we have is Yusuka. Now Yusuka on its own is pretty solid, but what you can do with Yusuka is you could be replacing him with units such as Mochi. Mochi is a good one since he slows, but Mochi still sets fire and his AoE is slightly bigger. So Mochi would be the ideal replacement for Yusuka. But again, if you don't have Mochi, Yusuka is not a bad replacement at all. Yeah. Okay, so next we have Dio and Jotro. On its own, Dio and Jotro are pretty respective, meaning that Jotro's AoE is pretty big enough to kind of replace as a Shank. Obviously, stun and unconscious is completely different. Dio is a good replacement for Shanks if you don't have Shanks with a ranged trait. You do want to have Dio and Jotro together. From what I've noticed, their stuns loop is kind of almost perfect and it's always in sync. So the way I would kind of say is, if you don't have Shanks, Dio and Jotro is a great alternative, as long as you can hit your manuals at a perfect time and you're able to kind of adjust from that. Okay, so next we have Blackbeard. Blackbeard is pretty self-explanatory. So at his final upgrade, he gets a full AoE. Anything in that radius gets cursed. It takes 15% increased damage to whatever kind of gets hit by it. So Blackbeard is kind of a staple. If you don't have Blackbeard, it's not really a big deal, but I do recommend it. Most people should have at least one. You don't really need it leveled. You don't need a special trait on it. You can place up to 5, which makes it a lot more accessible to people, and it is really cheap. Maxing out Blackbeard is not expensive in the slightest, so yeah, Blackbeard is a good alternative for that. Yeah. Okay, so from what I understand, Juvie is a cone AoE. It's kind of like a what top players would say, like a free-to-play Arima. I think Juvie is also a solid unit. We did use a Juvie in our run. It didn't necessarily do bad. It did somewhere around like 6 billion damage, so I know Juvie can't be that awful if it did that much. Juvie is kind of new to the meta. I would kind of new to the leaderboard scene. I would not say she's entirely meta, but I have seen people that can get some crazy numbers using Juvie. So throwing it out there for anyone that's interested. Okay, so the way we'd see these units in play, I would probably put Yusuka up here to kind of get what's upcoming. So I would put this one on closest, maybe put one kind of right here and put this one on last, just to make sure that you're always looping these kind of like AoE debuffs at a perfect time. So at a certain point, there's going to be too many to the point where they're always going to be constantly flowing through here. So a great way to stop both of them is by stopping this side and stopping the left side. Same thing goes for here. So I would kind of put a Yusuka here on closest, and then maybe put another one here. I don't have the money for it currently, but I would just kind of separate the amount of debuffs that you can place and slows through here. So starting from what we were just talking about, you do want to kind of have Blackbeard always debuffing everything. Some people place 2. I think 1 is just okay. but it kind of depends on, you know, how many you're running in the first place. Blackbeard, even though his effect really does hurt my eyes, you do want to kind of make sure he's in a great position to debuff everything and make sure that it's kind of in a similar spot, so it shouldn't be too hard. You place probably like 1 or 2 here, maybe like 1 here, and then maybe like another 1 here, and yeah, maybe 1 here. Who knows? You could kind of figure it out on your own. Like I said, it's not too expensive. You should be fine. Mine is only level 50, and the damage really shouldn't deal too much. Obviously, you do want to max them out just because that damage ends up stacking, but it shouldn't make or break you know, a round or two. I'm gonna sell this one because it is hurting my eyes. But so Jotaro is kind of interesting on its own. Jotaro has its own passive time stop, and as long as you have a range trait, anything in that area will get completely stunned and frozen. So Jotaro is kind of an S tier unit that I feel a lot of people actually sleep on. The god traits are obviously going to be ranged because you want to kind of abuse the amount of range that you can use to stop, and I've seen a lot of people kind of sell and replace depending on where the line is. So a lot of people will kind of just upgrade him and kind of loop his time stops. Okay, so I am going to kind of explain how kind of placements work. So for example, Irwin, if you are using something like a lightning Urza or just DPS in general, you kind of generally do want to place Irwin kind of like around here. Make sure when you're placing Irwin that you use the furthest range. So for example, I could place my lightnings up to here and I would still get buffed. So like for example, I'd put like my DPS somewhere around here, like that, for example, right? And in here I would be able, not read that, so in here I would be able to kind of buff my units from the ground, and that's kind of the idea that you want to go for. Same thing with Gones. So on itself, you want to place Gones somewhere around this area to here, just because once you get the max upgrade, Gon will be able to hit everything on the map, and that's kind of what makes Gon useful in this kind of thing. Obviously you can use, you know, the kind of strategies that you might have for yourself, so anything from like Crush, Natsuo, maybe you only want to use Urzas. It's completely up to you. It's just kind of like an ideal way of how we did it. Now this is the way I would kind of recommend things. So placing stuff like Sakura is really important. This is why having sniper on Sakura is important. Okay, so you want to place Sakura so she kind of buffs all the stuns slash like mini DPS that's here, and then you want to place a Sakura up here if you're using air troops. So ideally you should be kind of utilizing where your Sakuras are being placed, and same thing with your Gones. So let's say you're going to put all your Gones right here. You want to make sure that all the Gones are getting buffed. So as long as you're kind of idealizing where everything is kind of supposed to go, you should be great. You shouldn't have any issues. So yeah. Okay, and like I said, Gon should be able to kind of just do this on its own. I'm actually going to turn off these attack effects because this might take a little. Okay, so for example, Gon is not even max, and at max he still gets a decent amount of range. So this is kind of without Kisake buff and without having you know, that max level. So he should be able to reach, and sure enough, at max level he reaches all the way over here, which is why I think Gon is useful. You can obviously replace things with like Crush and whatever you might need. So yeah, when we're dealing with DPS, ideally you want to just make sure that Irwin is able to reach and Sakura is able to buff as well. DPS is the only thing that's going to keep you alive other than the stuns. So DPS kind of has to be, it can be worked on kind of last since it is a Namek run. But it is pretty important in the later rounds, so making sure you max out everything and kind of utilizing your space and kind of being self-aware of where to put everything can change the course of your run for sure. Okay, and then kind of last but not least, Yusuka is obviously in my opinion, the most important meta unit as of right now. Just because nothing else in the game kind of lowers your SPA and gives you a range buff and kind of fits this map perfectly. So with max level, you should be able to like reach all the way up to here or whatever. But Kisuke is pretty important. It does add that SPA and that range buff all the way to the entire map for Gon. And for a lot of things like Urza, you can upgrade and you'll be hitting everything in the map. So that's why I also think having a Kisuke is really important. Now, like I said, most people that see this video might not have Kisuke, but for the majority of the player base, I feel like most people do have Kisuke and stuff like Kite. So this is kind of where we kind of explain why I'm using Gon and what you kind of can replace it with. So obviously I'm using Gon for the range and the damage. I'm using Gon for the range and the damage, but you can kind of replace him with whatever you have. You're gonna have to test out kind of what you have as DPS and what you can supply yourself with, kind of like stuff like and what you can supply yourself with, like kind of slows and debuffs and whatnot. So like a lot of people are gonna have Kite. As long as you have a decent passive on Kite, you should be able to kind of replace Gon for whatever. I know my Gon is divine. You're not going to need a divine Gon. You can have like superior 2 or 3 and you'll do just as fine. I don't have another Gon. I mean, I do, but it's only golden and it's level 1, so I wouldn't be a perfect example of for a run like this. But that's what I kind of mean is you shouldn't need too much. It's more of just paying attention and being like kind of like your own master and strategizing like what you should be using and kind of how you utilize that. So yeah, so just for example, like if here, I'll wait up for my Kisuke. Okay, so for example, if I were to buff with Erwin and Kisuke and have a Sakura, my lightning Urza is going to be doing 71k with a 6-second SPA. It's going to be hitting the entire map, and same thing with my Gon. My Gon is going to be hitting 111 and it's going to be hitting the entire map with a 18-second SPA. So that's kind of the ideals that I'm talking about, is understanding what all your units are, kind of where to place them and how to utilize them to max potential that they can achieve. Here's going to be a screenshot of the units we used for our run. I think a few of them changed, but nothing like, I don't think a mythical was added. I think if anything, we dropped 1 or 2 of them. So like I said, it's not necessary. You aren't going to need everything, and on top of it, it's not super important to have things like you know, stuff like, you know, an Aaron founder or you know, things that people in Leaderboard normally run. So yeah.
Classy. 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 Classy.
This is going to be the end of the video though. I am going to leave off with maybe some clips if I hadn't put them already. Once again, I want to make sure that you guys like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. I'm live every other day, kind of on Twitch. It is twitch.tv/Sintra, and if you haven't joined my Discord, feel free to join it, discord.gg/Sintra. If you do try this, let me know how it goes. I want to know. And yeah, thanks for watching. Peace.